Hi, this is Tina McElroy Ansa, and we're here with episode 2 of Two Old Chicks Who Know a Lot of Shit. I'm here with my partner, my friend, my co-host, Wanda Lloyd. How you doing?
Hey Tina. Hey, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And we're ready to share some stories and wisdom. So, we ready to get started?
Oh yeah, we're ready.
I know
So
you were born ready, right?
I was born ready. You know I was. Hey, so Tina, I get some of my best thoughts when I'm walking the dog. And
Uh-huh.
so the other day I got this idea that we should add a segment called the check-in. And that is, we're going to just check in. What are we doing? What's up in our lives? And so we want to introduce our listeners to a segment. This segment, it's a little bit about what's going on and what defines us as in our season years. So some of our check-ins will be personal. Some of them will be about the work we're doing, whether that's writing, speaking, publishing, marketing, or working on this podcast. So my check-in, or I'm sorry, Tina's check-in is going to be sticky notes. It's called sticky notes. So as we were working on our book, meeting at the table, Tina kept talking about all these sticky notes, but she keeps her notes all over the walls and the doors and the cabinets and the desk. So Tina, what's on your sticky note this week?
Well, my sticky note this week is all about business. We say in our title that we're two old chicks who know a lot of shit, but we're also two old chicks who do a lot of shit. So this week I had to use a big post-it because it's down south press business. This is my
Mm.
publishing business. So I have to, from time to time, put on different hats. And sometimes, Wanda, we have to wear the same hat at the same time. But this is for me to respond to an order that's a multiple order of meeting at the table, the book that Wanda and I co-edited in Down South Press, my publishing company, published. And it says that it's going to ship 12 copies. And for us, we're a small publishing company. So that's a really big order. That's a good order for us. So I'm excited about it. And I wanted to get right on it today.
Okay, that sounds good.
What about
Good.
you?
So while you rely on sticky notes, I rely on my calendar, my Google Calendar. I put everything on the Google Calendar, and I may have introduced you to the Google Calendar because now I'm putting your stuff on the Google Calendar, the stuff that we do
I
together.
was just about to tell our listeners. No, I have to tell them this. This is another example of Wanda and me being East and West. Wanda swears by her Google Calendar. I, of course, like to either write something down on a real calendar. Wanda sent me a real calendar, like from a funeral home or something, as a joke, and I used it last year. So,
But then you lost it, didn't you?
huh?
Then
I
you
did.
lost it, didn't you?
I did indeed. So I like the sticky notes, but Wanda likes her calendar, but she's brought me around. That's a good thing about us. She's brought me around to her side. I see the value in some of Google things, and she even puts, I tell her I'm going to be doing something later on. I'll look on my Google Calendar, and she's put it on there.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so my calendar. This Sunday, I'm going to be speaking to a church youth group.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a friend, her name is Linda, and Linda and I met when we were, it was in 1966. It was between our junior and senior year in high school. And we didn't go to the same high school, but we met at a workshop, a journalism workshop. She was working for her school newspaper. I was working for my high school newspaper. And so we've been friends all this time. So when Linda called and asked me if I would speak to the youth in her church, when you have a longtime friend like that, you and I are in the same situation, you say yes. And so
Yeah.
I'm going to be talking I'm going to be talking to these young people. Most of them are high school students, but some of them are younger. And I'm going to talk about some of my school experiences in Savannah, some of the things I wrote about in my memoir, Coming Full Circle. I'm going to talk about the family I created. That's a chapter in my book. And because it's about something that happened in my youth, Linda wanted me to talk about that. But most importantly, I'm going to be talking about the importance of telling their own stories. Young people need to learn that they can really tell their own stories, and they don't have to tell their stories in print the way you and I did it all the time. They can write them, and we hope they will, but sometimes they can do a video. Sometimes they can do audio. There are just so many ways. They can do a podcast on their own, and the technology will allow them to do that. So that's on my calendar coming up in the next week or so.
Well, also, Wanda, you're telling them about their stories is important because young people don't even know they have stories. They don't think they have stories.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And I'm going to be telling them to talk to their elders, talk to their old chicks and guys in their family, because they shouldn't let those stories go by without talking to
listen.
them.
To listen to what they have to say. That sounds good.
Yeah. So that's the check-in for this episode. We'll be hearing more of Tina's sticky notes and Wanda's calendar. So Tina, our first segment today is the power of mentoring. So why don't you get us started with the power of mentoring?
I sure will. Mentoring is a subject that's just near and dear to both of our hearts. We've had different experiences in having mentors or looking for mentors or finding them, but both of our experiences have been the same in mentoring young folks. It's just a wonderful thing. I call my little mentees my little schoolgirls. My mother, who had 5 children and loved being a mother, looked forward to the end of summer when we went back to school. And so by August, she was sick of us. And she would dance around our beds as it got closer to September in school time, with singing this old Elmo James song called Hey, Hey, Little Schoolgirl. And she would dance around the bed saying, Hey, hey, little schoolgirls, your butt's in bed now, but you're going to have to get up and hit the grit soon and go to school. Or we would cover our ears and scream and go, oh, no, don't say that. Don't say that. Well, that's how I feel about my little schoolgirls, like my mother felt about us, that she really loved us. But when it was time to work, it was time for us to get our butts up and work. It was time for us to go to school and do what we were supposed to do. And I feel that same way about my little schoolgirls. I really love them, but it's tough love. It's the way my mother felt about us. Come on, we want you to know things. So I love my little schoolgirls and my little mentees in a tough way, in a guiding way, in an instructional way. But I hope it's all love. And it's almost magical for me, the way that I find my little schoolgirls. I've gotten together with all of my little schoolgirls in different ways. Sometimes I run across them, in my daily life, or in my daily work, my daily business life, in my literary life, in my publishing life. And I recognize them immediately. It's just something about them, Wanda. There's some kind of spark there,
Yeah.
And it's that spark that only I recognize, and that we share. There's some curiosity there. I love for my little schoolgirls to be curious. I love for them to be bold and to ask questions. But really, it's just the feeling that I have. I just know immediately that they're for me. I give them if I feel that way, I give them my contact information, and I wait and see what happens. Sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, but it's rarely not worked out, to tell you the truth, because I really got it down to a sort of science. Maybe, even though it is a magical science, So I give out my contact information, and if they reach out, then we start something. Very seldom do I reach out, because I really want them to take the first step. If they're really interested in being under my mentorship and knowing about writing, or knowing about gardening, or knowing about whatever I have to tell them. Right now I have a little schoolgirl. My latest little schoolgirl is Sonia. And Sonia lives in New York State, but she found me while visiting relatives in Georgia, on this tiny island off the coast of Georgia, 12 miles by 4 miles, while she was visiting relatives down here. And we met through someone that neither one of us knew when she came down here, and she's my joy. Her accomplishments are my accomplishments. I know how it feels to be a mother through my little schoolgirls, and their dreams and their hopes and their fresh view, whether they're young little schoolgirls, or I have little schoolgirls who are my age, whether they're young or whether they're our age, or whether they're in the 30s or whatever. The wisdom I think that we have to share with them is our gift to them. And it's all about reciprocity, because I've gotten back so much more from my little schoolgirls than, than I ever could have given them. In fact,
and we're working with one of your little schoolgirls right now, aren't we, Tina?
That's what I'm about to say. In fact, the person who's responsible for this podcast, we would never have it if it were not for our producer, Kara Walker, who is one of my little schoolgirls. She's been one of my little schoolgirls since 2004. And here she is making this dream possible for us. I'm telling you, my little schoolgirls are the gifts that keep on giving.
Good. Well, as long as you've been talking about your little schoolgirls for, ever since you've been a writer, you've been talking about them. And I never knew that story about your mother and that little song.
Really?
But no, you never told me that. So I did not know that.
But
So, huh?
I said, what do you know? It's always very interesting to us when we come up with something. Wanda told me something about her husband, I think. Oh, we shouldn't say that, but he did. But I had never known it before. And I was like, oh, this opens up a whole new world.
Yeah. As long as we've known each other, we still have a lot to learn about each other. So I call my young ones, and most of them are young, my mentees. And I have so many. And you know what? I actually used to call them my children. And then I worried about whether my daughter would get offended. I used to make speeches and I would say, my children find me everywhere, or I find children everywhere. I really was calling them my children, but I decided to change that a little bit. And so I've just, gone back to mentees. And so, but my children really do find me everywhere. My mentees followed me around at journalism conventions. They find me, of course, in newsrooms. A lot of them used to find me when they would come to my newspaper and interview for a job. And sometimes they weren't even interviewing for a job in my department in the newsroom. And they were, someone would have them come in the newsroom and talk to me, and they just stuck with me the rest of their lives. They're still in touch with me. So
you can't lose them. That's the truth.
You can't lose them, and I don't want to. I want to keep the ones that are doing really, really well.
I know.
And so, a couple of mine are are very special to me. One of them, oh my gosh, it had to be back in the late 80s, maybe. I went to Jackson State University for business. I was doing some work, some sort of kind of consulting there. And this young lady, I think she was in her junior year, she might have been a sophomore. She stood outside the meeting room, and when I came out, she just was all over me. She was like, I applied for an internship at USA Today. You sent me a letter. You wouldn't give me the internship. You told me I didn't have the experience. And she literally backed me into a classroom. Her name is Stacy. She backed me into a classroom, and she asked me to just take a seat so she could tell me why she should have an internship at USA Today. Well, of course, by the time we finished, she had an internship at USA Today. But even more than that, she's been my mentee, my friend. Now she's actually mentoring me in some ways, because she is an author, and she's done, I don't know, maybe a dozen books and after journalism, post-journalism. And so she has been mentoring me in many, many ways. And so Stacy is one of the people that, when I tell her or suggest that she do something, she does it exactly as I suggest, and the outcome is always good. Yeah, there have been some, it is. There have been some highs in her career, and there have been some lows in her career. And so we sort of work through that together. Another very young person that I'm working with right now is a young lady named Zoe. So she's a reporter at the Greenville News at this moment. She's about to change jobs. But her boss called me, I don't know, a couple of years ago and said, I have this young lady. She needs a mentor. I see a lot of potential in her. She's going to be a leader someday. Would you allow her to just gain some of the knowledge that you have? And so we've been Zooming for all these months. And literally, she came to Savannah last week, and we literally had the first face-to-face meeting last week. But again, she's someone who she does exactly, she does it the right way. And she too has had some highs. You know, we worked through her resume, we worked through her plan for her career, we worked through what she wants to do in terms of, you know, does she want to cover government, or does she want to cover politics, does she want to cover justice? And we really worked through all those issues together. So it's really important that we as seasoned people, I think, take on these young people and help them in their careers. I think that's really important.
Absolutely. You know, one of our mottos is the babies ain't got to learn the hard way.
Yeah, we've already done that.
To learn the hard way. We can help them. Well, Wanda, you know, you and I could talk about a mentoring all day, and we will be talking about it from time to time in upcoming shows, because we do believe it's just that important. However, one of our friends and an essayist and from Meeting at the Table brought up a fascinating question. This is Peachy Wimbush Polk. And when we talk, she's somebody who's very wise. She's younger than me, but she's very wise. And she's a new friend. We've just, you know, met with the book. And I find myself going to her from time to time. But what she brought up again is, you know, where does the mentor go to get her?
So where do you go?
I go to my peers for the most part. You know, young people I find can give me a different view sometimes. But when I really need, you know, to talk with somebody, I need some kind of guidance. I usually want somebody who's lived a little bit longer. So I usually go to someone, you know, my peer or around my age, or even somebody who's worked in that particular field, for instance, for a long time. They could be in their 30s, they could be in their 20s. You know, I mean, if I don't know anything about it, they know more than I do. But most of the time, I look to women who are gentle and who are kind. I think that's pretty much all I'm looking for. You know, because what I'm looking for in a mentor isn't always professional. It's usually personal.
Okay. I think of mentoring as more professional, but I have to say that there are two people that I consider mentors in different ways. One was my mother, and you met my mother. You knew my mother because we were roommates at Spelman, and she would come to Spelman and spend some time with us.
Glamorous Gloria, girl, she turned my world around. You mean to tell me there's Black women who travel the world in these beautiful suits with fur collars, you know, the business deals? I really had. She was the first, you know, top executive kind of person that I knew of, who was a woman of color who wasn't running a business, you know, who wasn't running a funeral home or a hairdresser, you know, shop. Who had
she was a buyer. So, and she worked for the Army and Air Force Exchange Service. So I didn't really rely on her professionally until after she retired, and as I was rising through the ranks in my career and became a senior person. She was really a mentor for me because she had done some of the things that I was trying to do. She had some of the experiences. And so she would tell me stories about how sometimes they would trundle her out because she was the only Black person in the organization, and they wanted to be sure she was in the pictures.
Yes, exactly.
When somebody, one of the big bosses was coming in.
And she was a woman of height, of stature like yourself, right?
Yeah, she was a tall woman also. Or sometimes somebody would come in from, I don't know, the Pentagon or something to their office, and they would say, well, let's get Gloria to come into this meeting, you know, even if it wasn't her area. And so she had to, you know, she informed me that people are going to rely on me because they're going to see me as a person that will advance someone else's agenda because I'm there. People will think, oh, well, they're considerate of diversity, even though that might not be my job at the time. But I really relied on her for a lot of businessy kinds of things as my career began to rise. But the other person I rely on, and you know who that is, this is my 38-year-old top of the millennials daughter, Shelby, who when I want to know what the young folks are saying, she'll give it to me fast and straight. And so she's another
Shelby is the reason that we have the title that we do have for Two Old Chicks.
Yeah, because I was reluctant, and Shelby laughed out loud. She said, "Oh my God, my friends will love this." And so far, that's true.
However, that's the title. Don't change a word.
Yeah. But there were. I won't belabor this, but eventually there were a couple of men in my career who were in my company who were very supportive, and I guess I would call them mentors as well. But I really didn't have professional mentors when I was very new in the business because I'm one of the oldest Black journalists I know, and so there really wasn't an opportunity for me to have a professional mentor who is African American, a role model, I guess, someone who looked like me. And there were no women, there were no people of color working in daily newspapers or television in my community in Savannah when I was a young person. So this whole notion of mentoring came to me late in life, sort of mid-career. So that's kind of my mentoring story, and I'm just really pleased that I've had the opportunity to touch so many lives.
Yeah, it's a joy. It's such a joy. I'm just telling you. It just comes back. It comes back at you in waves. And as they're, I feel like they're going out into the world, and as they do these wonderful things, it's like a pebble in the pond. These are all these ripples that come back to us. You just had one recently of one of your little schoolgirls and really achieving, one of your mentees achieving something, and it does. It informs us all. It informs us all. That's wonderful. Gosh.
Well, that is true.
The first thing that I learned from Miss Tina is to surround yourself with like-minded people and build those relationships first.
I'm Stacey Hawkins Adams, author and former journalist. The first time I met Wanda Lloyd was during my sophomore year of college when she chatted with me about an internship opportunity under her leadership at USA Today. Typically, she hired journalism students with a bit more experience than I had, but she gave me a chance, and I thrived under her guidance. She was impressive, generous with her wisdom, thoughtful and strategic, yet also approachable all those years ago. And those are the same gifts of character and heart that she leads with today.
The first time I met Wanda Lloyd, she gave me a wake-up call about journalism in my career. My name is Zoe Nicholson. I'm a reporter with the Greenville News in South Carolina, and Wanda has been one of my greatest mentors in this industry. I'm just starting out. She has taught me how to think critically, how to think about what I want, who I want to be, and how to cover communities with empathy and respect. She's also taught me how to navigate the journalism industry and just work life in general. She approaches it with a toughness and an empathy that is really easy to accept and challenge.
So Tina, this month is June. It's Pride Month, where those in the Pride community are celebrating, and we have a special guest. As we were putting together meeting at the table, gosh, I almost said coming full circle. I get those books mixed up. As we were putting together meeting at the table, which is a collective of 16 really essays about social justice, but about sharing information about our experiences as African American women. We had the pleasure of working with someone that is going to be with us tonight. So I'm going to introduce Karen Hawkins. She says in her bio, she says she's grateful every day that she gets to be rebellious for a living. She is co-publisher and co-editor-in-chief of the Chicago Reader, as well as the owner and founder of feminist media company Rebellious Magazine for Women. She also co-hosts, I know you like that name, Rebellious. You're always talking about
I love it. Oh, God. I want to be a rebel.
She also co-hosts 2 podcasts. Of Course I'm Not Okay is one of them, and Feminist Erotica is the other. She has a bachelor's degree in journalism from University of North Carolina at Urbana-Champaign and a master's degree from Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism. Her journalism background includes positions with the Associated Press and the Windy City Times. She's also a national board member for NLGJA, the Association of LGBTQ Journalists. Karen is a lifelong Chicagoan, and she lives in the downtown area of Chicago with her partner and her favorite photographer, Samantha. And get this, Tina, and their 2 elderly cats.
Yes, we got to talk, Karen.
Her essay at Meeting at the Table was entitled Leaving Pieces of Myself at the Door. And I had the pleasure of editing her, and she had the responsibility of explaining to me exactly what that means, leaving pieces of myself at the door. But I'm really happy to share this, excited to share this. Last month, Karen accepted the 2021 Studs Terkel Community Media Award. And in her acceptance speech, she described herself as a mouthy Black lesbian feminist journalist. So congratulations, Karen. We are very proud of you. And let's bring on Karen Hawkins. Hey, Karen.
Hello, y'all. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh,
So
you
it's
know,
so
it's
good
a joy
to see
have
you.
Yeah, and to actually see you too.
Yeah, because I edited Karen on Zoom, I think. But Tina, you didn't have that opportunity. So
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. So I only know Karen. I only know you through your work. It's another wonderful thing.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I can't wait for us to meet in person someday. Fingers crossed.
Oh my goodness, soon, not someday, soon. That's my new favorite word. Well, someday ain't promised to us. Soon, I'm gonna get a hug soon. I said I probably was gonna go on a hugging and kissing to a when it's all clear. I'm ready to kiss some babies and hug some children.
So Karen, happy Pride Month.
Thank you very much. Happy Pride Month to y'all.
Thank you very much. So let's get into our discussion with you. We couldn't pass up this opportunity without talking to you about the LGBTQ community. So I read some stats recently on how states do or do not protect gay people from discrimination. And one of the things that I learned is that there are 27 states that do not prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. So considering where we are in 2021, tell us, what does this year's Pride Month mean for you, and what are we celebrating, and what still needs to be done?
Wow, how long do I have?
Oh my goodness.
So, I mean, that statistic is sobering, and whenever I hear them, it hits me like it hit me the first time, it hit me like it hit me when I realized that I was a lesbian. Like, oh God, this is going to be really hard, right? And I just think we do have so far to go, and I think we, as a community, use Pride to celebrate where we've come from and how many strides we've made. But as you said, it's really important to also talk about where we need to go. And for me, this year in particular, Pride feels very hopeful, and Pride feels like hopefully an opportunity for all of us living at many intersections to finally be embraced in a bunch of different communities. To me, Pride this year means hopefully Black communities are more willing to consider us as part of their communities. And, I heard someone kind of talk about all Black Lives Matter, kind of borrowing this terrible all lives matter, but making it all Black Lives Matter. Like, yes, when you say Black Lives Matter, you have to include queer and trans and non-binary folks in that too. You can't just talk about straight folks. So I am hoping that Pride this year is an opportunity for us to be more accepted in the Black community and for the LGBTQ community to do better by its people of color. And there have been so many reckonings that have happened, of course, across so many industries and so many places. And I really see this as an opportunity for us to continue the conversations that started last year and to build on where we've come from. Pride in Chicago, I'm living in Chicago, and as you mentioned, and our Pride Parade got pushed from June to October. And I really am hoping that by then we will have continued these conversations, and that Pride this year will be more inclusive and more welcoming and more fun and more rainbow colored than ever before.
Oh, good. When you wrote your essay, you started with, I don't have it in front of me, but sort of a phrase that said, when you go to the Black Journalists Conference, you were not accepted by Black journalists.
Oh, no.
Because of your status. So, you just referenced that a little bit, being more accepted by the Black community. Is that one of the major issues, you think?
Absolutely.
Well, Karen, I'm just listening to you. I'm thinking that if you surround yourself with the same kind of people, who are kind of your kind of people, you never know all the people in your community who are, who don't think the same way that you do.
That is absolutely true. Yes. And I mean, I think that is true. And I think it's also true that we all know queer people in our communities, but we just think, well, they're that way and we don't talk about them, right? Like, oh, everybody knows that person's that way. I'm thinking, the stereotype of the hairdresser, the choir director. We all know about these folks and we just don't talk about it. And I want to create a world in which those folks can talk about their partners and their spouses and their lives and be their whole selves. I think that was my essay was being able to bring your whole self to every space that you're in. I went to the Black Journalists Convention and realized that I could not really be out as a lesbian there and feel comfortable. So now I'm hiding that part of myself, and I want to create an environment where we all get to be all of who we are all the time.
Yeah. Is that why you created Rebellious Magazine?
Absolutely. That is absolutely why. Because, I came from mainstream media where that was not true.
I was just going to say, tell us a little bit about Rebellious Magazine.
Oh, thank you for asking.
Hey, before you do that, let me just say that there is a really big storm going on. So if I get disconnected, it's because the power is flickering. So tell us about the magazine.
Oh, no. All right. I hope everything's all right.
Yeah.
So Rebellious Magazine, I founded Rebellious 9 years ago as I was leaving my job with the Associated Press. And I really wanted an opportunity to tell stories in my own way and to have other, at that time, women tell stories in their own stories in their own way. And we really started being about personal essays. It was really important to me, right, that there not be all of these layers of editors and folks to filter people's stories. And 9 years later, we have women, we have non-binary folks, we have trans folks, we have gender non-conforming folks, and we have expanded beyond personal essays to news and politics. We are really strong on arts and culture. We cover the comedy community, for instance. We thank you, Field Foundation of Illinois. We have a grant to cover sexual health and reproductive justice. So we've expanded what we're doing. We will continue to expand. And it's just been really exciting, frankly, to have survived. I have watched so many publications come and go in the last 9 years. And everybody gets excited about the new shiny thing. And we coalesce around the new shiny thing. And then it's a flash in the pan. And so to still be here 9 years later, growing and evolving feels amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, I tell you, we were talking mentoring earlier. I kind of wish I could claim you as one of my little schoolgirls.
I got it.
Oh yeah, number one, get in line, Wanda.
That's right.
Get in line. Oh gosh. When we were talking about the show, and we looked up, and we were talking about June. We were talking, about LGBTQT issues. We were talking about the people that we love, who are gay and who love other people that we love, and we wanted to include something in the show because we're allies. And we want the world to know that we're allies, and if we just don't love you, we're allies. We're allies, and we're happy to have you here. Just really happy to share you with the world.
So Karen, how can we help? And I don't mean Tina and me, I mean the greater community. How can we help?
There are a couple ways you can help. So, of course, you can support Rebellious Magazine. We are a state nonprofit. We are run by the Feminist Media Foundation. You can donate to the Feminist Media Foundation. If you go to rebelliousmagazine.com, you can find where to contribute, to donate. Donations are tax deductible. And you can also support NLGJA, the Association of LGBTQ Journalists that I'm on the board of. That is a nonprofit. You can donate to NLGJA. You can offer to mentor students. There are so many ways to be involved with them. And of course, I should mention the Chicago Reader, my main employer. Rebellious is my passion project. It's my baby, but my day job is at the Chicago Reader, which I also love. We are also a nonprofit at chicagoreader.com. You can also donate there. And also, you can help by being allies as you two are. I can't tell you how much I appreciate being here and getting to meet y'all both on Zoom and being included in your June celebration. And I just encourage people to support the LGBTQ folks in their lives and the folks who might be struggling with being ostracized by their families or marginalized. Just reach out to folks. It really means a lot.
Great. Well, I've been a part of NLGJA since it was created. I've been to conferences, I've been mentoring people, I've been a speaker there, so I support that as a journalist, and I hope the best for that organization and all the organizations, including your magazine, moving forward. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate y'all. And congratulations on launching this podcast. This is amazing.
Oh,
Thank you.
tell me about it. Oh,
Well, you're the old pro at it. You already have 2 podcasts. So.
Well, thank you so much. You made it very special for us. And I know you made time for us, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And we talked about mentoring earlier. So if you're still looking for mentors, if Wanda doesn't suit you, you got another one over here.
Okay.
Now we're fighting over you, Karen. Thank you so much.
I love it.
So much. Love
Bye,
you.
Karen. Thank you.
Bye. Thank y'all.
So Tina, we're coming toward the end, but we're not quite there yet. So in our first episode, we talked about a segment that we were going to do about dropping some wisdom. Because you know what? We are 2 old women who know a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And so let's share some of that stuff. So my wisdom today is do what you say you're going to do. Do what you say you're going to do. So last week I had this young man I was working with. He was a construction guy, and there was some work that I needed done in the house. And, you know, he had great references. I found him on one of those neighborhood websites. And he had the right attitude. He had the right pricing. He had the time. And so I brought him into my home, and he was doing some work. And he did really good work. But one thing that really bothered me about him, he's young. He's got a young family. He's got 2 babies, a wife and 2 babies. And he's really passionate about his work. But he would say something like, well, I'll be back tomorrow at 9 o'clock. And so, you know, 9 o'clock came, 10 o'clock came, he wasn't here. And so I guess he assumed that this old lady really didn't have anything to do but sit around and wait for him to show up. And I questioned, why didn't you text me or call me or DM me or something? Because I did have some things to do. In fact, on one of those days, I had a 12 o'clock Zoom book presentation. And so he was going to come in the morning and get some things done. And I think he was going to put some paint on, and then he was going to come back in the afternoon and maybe prime in the morning and paint in the afternoon. So I knew that I had this block from about 12 to 1:30 where the house would be quiet. He wasn't going to be hammering and walking back and forth behind my shot and all that. And he didn't show up. And so it bothered me. I come from a business background. I come from a corporate background. And so if we say at any time, we're going to have a meeting at 9 o'clock, the expectation is that we were going to be in our seats at 8:55. And we were going to have our coffee or our juice or our bottle of water or whatever it was there. So we didn't have to get up and go say, oh, let me go get my coffee. We were going to start at 9 o'clock because guess what? There was something else that had to happen at 10 o'clock for most of us on that day. There was never any leeway to not do those things on time. So, I had a conversation with him, and I explained to him that, I have a life too, even though I'm old, and that he really couldn't just saunter in at any time.
Old chicks have lives.
Old chicks have lives, but at least call me. I'm okay if something happened. But I think one of his machines broke down or something, he said. But just call me and let me know that so that I'm not sitting here waiting for you and expecting you, because maybe I have to change a doctor's appointment. Maybe, there could be any number of things. So that's I think life has a cascading effect. If what you do delays someone else, then they are delayed for what they need to do. So, how dare he assume that I just didn't have anything else to do. So I guess no one had pulled him aside and given him this business talk, but I hope by doing that, as he rises in his business, and it is his business, that he'll be able to be more responsible for other people. So that's my wisdom. Do what you say you're gonna do. So what's yours this time, Tina?
Well, my wisdom is titled Enough Ways. I decided for this particular wisdom, I had other ones earlier that I was going to do, and I juggled them a little bit, but they didn't feel right until I got this one. And I reached deep into my family lore and wisdom to choose a bit of wisdom I'd heard all my life. The story goes, my paternal grandfather, Big Daddy's distant cousin, Cousin Alice, you have to say it like that, Cousin Alice, used to always say, there's enough ways in this world for everybody to have one of their own. Isn't that wonderful? Especially in this world of forever 2020, where it doesn't look like we're ever going to get out of this particular cycle, and this constant conflict that we have in our faces all day long over the simplest matter. It reminds us that everyone has a point of view. It reminds us that others cling to their beliefs in the same way that we cling to ours. That this one so-called country Georgia saying encapsulates our world. And it offers us a hope that there's some way through this morass that we've created, or that's been created for us. Sometimes it's a good strategy to just let the folks keep their own ways while you keep your sense of peace.
Well, that's all for this episode of Two Chicks. Thanks for listening. We hope you'll tell others about our podcast and join us again next time when we'll be talking about writing and storytelling, something we know a little bit something about, huh, Tina?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, so we're going to call it, so you want to tell your story? We'll have a special guest, and of course, we'll be dropping some more wisdom.
Absolutely. Make sure that you subscribe to Two Old Chicks on Spotify and YouTube so you can never miss an episode. Plus, follow us on Instagram at Two Old Chicks Podcast. We'll see you soon. In the meantime, take care. Love and peace.
Bye-bye, everybody. We love you.